Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Rafael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Rafael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. David, good morning. How are you, my friend?
Oh, couldn't be any better. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, absolutely. I'm thrilled that you're on the Coaching Call. We have so much to talk about, right?
Yes.
You do so much to help so many people, and I love what you're doing. I kind of looked at some of your YouTube. Was it YouTube? Maybe Instagram, and how you're definitely disrupting the market, if you will. I love that. But before we get into that, I want to get to know you a tiny little bit more. Talk to me about your childhood. Where did you grow up? And then we'll get into how you became who you are today.
I grew up in Southern California. My family is originally second generation, my mom and dad, Italians who were in Buffalo, New York. And when my dad had the opportunity to get a job in Southern California, he got the heck out of Buffalo because it's cold. Yeah. And so I grew up here on the beach, surfing and playing soccer, and got very into soccer when I was young and did it all the way into my teenage years and had a lot of different coaches. And my dad was in sales and also a military reservist. So everything from leadership to honor to discipline to motivation and inspiration was a really big part of my life as a child. And then at 17 years old, I took a giant left turn and said that I wanted to do the performing arts and sing and dance instead of being an athlete. And there, the directors became the coaches in my life. So that's me in a nutshell. And here I am today, still in Southern California, paying these ridiculous prices because it rains like 12 times a year.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Ridiculous prices. Yeah. You know, it's very funny. We'll have to get together. I go to San Diego, I go to LA, so if you're near, we'll definitely have to.
I'm right between them.
Oh, we'll have to have lunch or something. Absolutely. And you're right, because the gas prices are astronomical and everything. I mean, and
yeah, it's very interesting. And my mom's side of the family is from Jefferson City, Missouri, and my parents have moved back there, and boy, they love to send me a picture of the gas station prices every once in a while just to make me crazy.
So one of the things I did notice is that there's a lot of electric cars in California.
Absolutely. It's
people are trying to save money that way.
Yeah, and the charging stations, it's really interesting. A lot of people don't realize that, they think electric cars are going to take off in these, ultra progressive Uber towns, Pacific Northwest. A lot of people think, yet people forget LA is the driving mecca. So the people who just wish that we had public transportation instead, and they don't want to drive a lot, they just want to go to work and back. The electric vehicles they started with the hybrids and then the plug-ins, and then it's funny that in my wife's carpool taking the kids to school, if they ever go on a road trip, like when she took the Girl Scouts, they played Count the Teslas.
Really? Yeah. So one of the things that I love that what we're going to be talking about today, and usually this show is so I can get to know you more, but I think with what you're doing, I'm going to get to know you a lot more, because I love that you're empowering first-time home buyers.
Yeah,
How on earth did that come around? Let's go a little back and what interested you in real estate?
when I was in my late 20s, I had an amazing career from like 21 to 28. I did so many different things in show business, which was that left turn I took. Um,
Mm,
and I got to a certain point where I was really lucky. There are people who work, 20, 30 years in the business and don't have the luxury or the luck to be involved in the kind of projects that I was in. And so when I saw that there's a level in show business where either the people are sending you the scripts and you get to pick and choose what you like, and that's the very, very, very top, or
right,
you're auditioning all the time.
right.
And that instability wasn't something I wanted to do. So I started looking at investing first. So in the late 90s and the early 2000s, I was doing real estate investing, met my wife. Uh, we talked about the stability thing, and that's when I decided, okay, I understand and enjoy the investment side of real estate, but I don't like the numbers and the spreadsheets. So I got into residential real estate, and my wife and I moved down to Orange County from the LA area and decided that this was going to be my second career. Um,
Mm,
with the entire goal being family and putting those personal goals above achievement goals, because I'd been lucky and done a lot of great stuff. So I started in real estate, working on the residential side in about 2006, early 2006. And after 5 years or so in the business, I saw some incredible flaws because I'm in an expensive area in the level or lack thereof of customer service for first time homebuyers who are
mm,
spending, at the time it was three or $400,000. Now it's 6 or 7.
yeah,
Um, and it was just paltry and really flabbergasting how what so-called training was being given to these realtors.
mm,
And so that started my wheels a spinning. And in 2019, well, 2018, I took a year and I stepped back and I built something that was a passion project and a labor of love.
mm,
That was to help to educate and empower first-time home buyers. Um, Figuring out that eventually there would be a way for me to make this a business as well. But the original goal was just give
right,
first.
right.
And here we are, where are we? 6 years later.
2025.
Yeah, yeah. Trying to do the math. Yeah, so six years later, and now we're nationwide, and we're helping tens of thousands of people each year. Some people just listen for free. Some
Mm,
people will come in and say, "Hey, who can you recommend?" And that's where what we do is there are 3 million real estate agents in the
right,
United States.
mm,
There's only a little over 1 million homes for sale.
right,
So the bar is too low. Anybody can do it. It's ridiculous. So I've there are a bunch of companies out there that have realtors pay them so they can be on their list.
right.
Like come use our recommended people, but they're not vetted.
Mm,
Their experience is in no way looked into. It's purely who's going to pay the bill.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so we've got 250 people that I vet. I go all over the country, travel like you do, meet with them, interview people, and sometimes people will say, "Hey, just let me hook up with one of your people." I call them a unicorn. Um, but the main goal is that the consumer gets the planning part,
Mm,
which most people do not get.
right.
When you reach out and you Google someone in this industry, a realtor or a lender, if you're not ready to buy that weekend, they'll say, "Great, save money and call me in 3 months." And what I found through focus groups and talking to people in that age bracket is that they're like, "I got 8 months left on my lease. Just give me a couple things to do right now."
Yeah, yeah,
And I've been doing that here in Southern California for so long. I was like, "Cool, let me put it on a podcast and you can listen to it on the way to work and go home and at least feel like you're making progress."
yeah, yeah. So here's the thing, right? You were a realtor in 2008. How was that?
Um, The interesting thing about the real estate industry is the way that it is built is it's a giant numbers game for the brokers.
Mhm.
Therefore, the newer agents are the people that are uh, pushed towards the first time home buyers, because the more experienced agents, they want to spend all their time just doing listings, higher return on investment, less time, less effort, less energy.
Mhm.
So the other thing that was interesting for me was I built my business not on cold advertising and cold marketing. I built it by talking to my sphere, the
Mhm.
people that I knew, the sphere of influence, everyone that, because I'd been in Orange County my entire life. I was only 38 at the time.
Mm.
So when the market crashed, most of my friends were still renting. Most of the colleagues I'd worked with were still renting. And for them, it was a windfall. So
Mm.
it's the crazy thing about real estate. When you focus on first time home buyers,
Right.
uh, a recession of any sort is good news for them. It
Mhm.
was a huge learning curve to understand the financial aspects behind what happened. And I did end up short selling a lot of properties, people that were trying to avoid foreclosure.
Right.
And it was also a huge test in the mental game,
Right. Sure.
because you want to go to work and be surrounded by positive. Everyone around me was, it was like 1929 in the stock market. They were ready to jump out the window. So it was a huge growing period for me.
Absolutely. Here's the funny thing. In 2005, I got my license, and I was doing great. And then what I wound up figuring out is that, like you talked about education, I would go to seminars with all these great guys and girls who were teaching how to be a better agent. So I would go to all these different seminars. I was the one that the other agents would like, Rafael, because they were like hanging out, talking. I'm on the phone. I'm talking to
Yeah.
people. I'm reaching out. I'm doing all the due diligence. But I got out. I did not renew my license in 2008 because I had a lot of clients who were window shopping, just window shopping. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm wasting my time with you guys, and you're just window shopping? I said, no. Plus, I had another business so at that time. So I said, you know what? I'm going to focus on my other business. I'm going to let this go aside. And then I started building other businesses. But it's so interesting when you talk about the educated consumer and the educated person who's supposed to sell you the product, right? Because most of the time they're just looking at making a sale. They really don't care about you or what you're going to get out of it, right? So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed one of your things that I saw is that you're saying how as a first time home buyer they're working for you for free, right? Real estate agents, I was working for free. I didn't get paid until I sold that house, right? And
Yeah, and
that,
most of the time that the payment will come almost completely from the seller. And there's been a
correct.
change since the lawsuit, but it's still a large portion is the majority of the time paid for by the seller. So I always tell people, if you went down to the YMCA to play basketball and you saw, some 22-year-old kid that has an awesome Instagram account
Mm.
and LeBron James, who would you pick? So why do we why do we allow these people that are just massively inexperienced, to be out there prospecting to these clients? And then most importantly, I don't think the clients understand you can go pick the best agent in your town,
Mm.
period. And it's not like hiring a lawyer.
Right.
You hire the guy for $300 an hour, or if you're a celebrity, you hire the guy for $5,000 an hour. It's not like that. You can get the $5,000 an hour guy, and most of the time the seller's going to pay for almost all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. You're gonna well, especially if he's the best one in the market. For example, out here in Long Island, there's a guy Theodore, and they called him the 800-pound gorilla because this guy, you turn around, you see a house for sale. Oh, it's got his name on it. Oh, it's got, and even now, and back when I knew of him in 2008, I actually spoke to the guy for a little while, and he's like, yeah, just people trust me. And that was the whole thing. People trusted him. He went into the house. And even now, I still see, I think he may be retiring soon. But even when I drive in the neighborhood, you can see his signs. And then all those houses go because he knows the market really well, obviously. And that's why he's such a top producer. But if I was buying a house in this neighborhood, that's my agent, right? Even if I never knew him, but if I see so many listings by him, I got to go see him, right?
Well, and that's the interesting thing about the buyer's agent connection within the industry of real estate. What most of the consumers out there do not understand is that, maybe you will go to a big name and then they go cool, and then you end up working with someone they hired 2 weeks ago who just got their license, because a lot of times the big names don't end up working with the actual first time home buyers. And that's where, I was talking with my dad about it, and before I started this whole platform, and I thought, it just has to be changed, and if it's not changed, it needs to be unveiled. And so part of my education is a little bit of behind the curtain, but mostly it's just giving people a blueprint on, these are the things that you should be looking for. If you Google someone and they send you to someone else on the team, you still need to vet them with the same strictness in your interview process that you would with someone who you absolutely trusted completely, or a perfect stranger. You need to make sure that every single one of them is going to be able to give you the level of service that you deserve. I mean, it's ironically so backwards. The people who need the most hand holding and the most explanation are the people who get the least trained and most underqualified representatives.
Yeah. So when you talk about first time home buyers, so for example, let's say there's a couple that they bought their house for the first time, and and then all of a sudden they got divorced. Now, what usually happens, and I've seen it, a lot of friends of mine have had this happen, and it's so sad for me to see this happen. They have this nice house or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're living in somebody's basement somewhere. They are renting a basement, and I'm like, oh my God, you went from having this beautiful house to like, yeah, the mortgage. Maybe they were still paying the mortgage because they got divorced, until they fully get divorced, and then all of a sudden they're living in a basement. They're paying high child support, and I'm like, why are you living in a basement? Can't you at least rent a nice apartment or a nice house? They're like, I can't afford it. So what winds up happening to that man or that woman, for instance, when they go ahead and because they were down in the dumps and they somewhat pick themselves up, maybe they rent a place it's a better, maybe it's a second floor or something like that. They're out of the basement, and now they're looking to purchase a house. Would you consider them a first-time home buyer again, or is that they've already had that problem and they're a second-time home buyer?
There's a big misconception about first-time home buyer. People think that when you are a first-time home buyer, that there is this giant plethora of advantages, and I mean technical financial advantages that you are afforded. It's not true. Anyone buying a home can use a low down payment option. There are some programs and grants that are specifically for first-time home buyers, but many of them state that if you haven't purchased a home in the last 3 years, you are once again a first-time home buyer.
Really?
So,
3 years?
yeah. And at How to Buy a Home, we have people that reach out to me all the time who have, whether it's a divorce or whether it's a single person or a couple that is still together, and they'll say, "Hey, we bought our home 6 years ago. Our realtor didn't know what the heck they're doing. Last time I checked, they're out of the business now." So I feel like a first-time home buyer again.
Right.
So that anybody can come and re-educate themselves in the process, because not to mention the fact that things change so quickly. But to answer your question, as far as the individual who may have purchased a home together and now is living separate again, yeah, that's when you definitely have to start changing your mindset into that of a first-time home buyer. And what can happen is, just like the 35-year-old who's been renting and doesn't think that they can afford to buy a home. We've been doing this 6 years. 72% of the people, I did the stats early in 25. 72% of the people that come into me and say, I got to get ready, I'm not ready, I need like 12 to 18 months, they're under contract in 3.2 months. Simply because the lack of information. People do not understand what is possible. So I would say to the divorcee who is living in the basement, if you're in the basement, the simple equation is this: if you're paying the rent for a regular 2-bedroom apartment, you can probably afford, or it just be a little bit more expensive once you have the down payment, to purchase an entry-level home. So if you're renting for $2,000, you can probably afford the average American home, which is around $400,000. Now, if you're in the basement and you're paying, your uncle $225 a month, no, you're not going to be able to buy a house with that. But like you said, when they get to the second floor, sure. And that's where it's just the lack of information and the opportunities that are there. So a lot of times that's where, as from the coaching side of things, we have to start with mindset.
Yeah.
And explain to them, these are your possibilities. And then that's what the cool thing that I'm trying to break open to the whole world is that, okay, and then if it's not a stop or go conversation, it's not, yes, you can get out of the apartment next month. It's a starting line. Like I said, 72% of the people we talk to and we go, yeah, you're way more ready than you thought you were, so we can move. But for some people, they're so scared to have the conversation because they think they're going to get a red light and that's it. And I'm trying to open the door to people to say, okay, maybe you're in the apartment right now. You've had a rough go, obviously. But maybe there's some equity that you gained from the other house that's sitting in a savings account, or maybe you got nothing. Cool. I'm going to start with you the same way I'm going to start with the 22-year-old. Let's do a 12-month plan. And we start working on their credit score, their debt management, and their savings. And even if you're doing $25 a month at things and watching your score go up 3 or 5 points a month, great. Then we check next month, and then we check next month. And then 8 months, 12 months from now, we see where you're at. And the lack of information, as I keep saying, that's what really will then separate, because suddenly they'll realize, oh, wait a minute, I just did these little things for 6 months and now I can afford a 5% down payment.
My mic was muted. Here's what I'm getting at. Why are you doing this? Why do you care?
It started as a passion project and a labor of love. But there was a business model behind it. 12 years into real estate I grabbed I never forget it. I went to Staples and I got a big giant spiral notebook and started doing that entrepreneur thing, working the day job. And then every time I'm not, just writing ideas. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? What can I do to fix it? So my original intention was I was going to be a Southern California real estate brokerage, just built differently than all the other ones. And I was going to take advantage of all the people that had, let's use all the marketing terms. It's expensive in Southern California. Pain points, right? The biggest issue, the biggest friction for anyone in Southern California is I work in Orange County. Everything around where I work is starting at $600,000. And so I thought I would build a team where I had a division that was specifically designed to do more than just sell homes to those first-time home buyers, like you were talking about, where you meet them and you can tell. We call it commission breath.
Right.
That agent just needs to sell that home with you so they can pay their mortgage.
Right.
We would have a division that was dedicated to pipeline creation. And within that pipeline creation, you would be educating these people. And then that division would then grow exponentially because we would have so many satisfied people. Because the thing is, the younger generation love to get on YouTube and Reddit and social media and make comments and tell their horror stories.
Yeah.
So if you are the opposite of that, so that was my original intention, create something the opposite of the horror stories that were out there. 87% of real estate agents quit their job before they hit year 5. And
like I did.
yeah. Well, you had the best excuse ever, 2008. So
That's for sure.
I had to completely reinvent what I was doing. But so that was the idea. The idea was that it was going to be a division. And then I really thought it was going to be a YouTube channel. And as I was growing this as an entrepreneur and continually learning, I was listening to so many different podcasts from all these entrepreneurs who were doing everything from e-commerce to social media marketing.
Right.
And I just kept hearing people talk about voice. There was a weird thing on Alexa for a while called flash briefings that I tried. That was a voice, like 3-minute thing that you did. And then someone started talking about podcasts. And so I started the podcast, and lo and behold, about 6 months in, someone called me and said, and I really did it so that my Southern California realtors could, or my Southern California clients, instead of me meeting them at Starbucks and having an hour-long conversation,
Right.
they could do it on the way to work. And then when we go to Starbucks, everything's in fast forward, as the kids like to say, fast forward to the good part.
Yeah.
And then people started calling me saying, wow, this is such great education. I can't find it anywhere on the internet. Is there someone in Nashville? Is there someone in Denver? Is there someone in Chicago?
Wow.
So that's when I went to the people that I do 5 or 6 trips a year meeting with other agents, which is what the top agents will do because of job transfers. I'm in California. Holy moly. You know how many people leave the state here when they get to a certain level in their taxes? So I had to have contacts in Atlanta, in Chicago, in Portland. So I took them and just kind of brought them in. And if they were willing to be an educational resource and would help these people with the planning side of things, then I could have this nationwide team of people that I would represent. So that's an extremely long answer to your question. I did it at first to build a small team so that within my own Southern California real estate business, I could at least have a little piece of my business that made me happy. Because the working with the first-time home buyers makes me happy. And if I systematized it, then I could get volume within that in my own little division. And then, I hit the lucky entrepreneur path where there was a larger vision. And here we are today.
I mean, I love the passion behind it. I love what you're doing, and the fact that you're helping people see that it's attainable, right? Because a lot of people go, I can't get it, or even like before I talked about the man who's living in the basement. What about the wife who's now living with mom and dad, and yeah, she's still going to work. Maybe she's not paying the rent because her parents are not going to charge her. But can she still get this opportunity on her own, as a single mom? And maybe she doesn't want her kids, being raised by her parents entirely. So she wants that independence again, right? So I love what you're doing. because it definitely shows that your passion is going to help someone else create their passion. You talked earlier about credit score. Now, for example, I know a young man in Southern California, San Diego, who at the age of 20, he's a martial artist. He bought his martial arts school. He bought himself a brand new Tesla, didn't want the deals that they were giving him because they wanted to give him a deal on a cheaper one. He's like, no, I want the better one. So he bought himself a Tesla. And recently, maybe a year ago, he bought himself a house. He's 21 years old. This kid is phenomenal because he understood the value of what you're teaching, to focus in on what you need to do, to save your money, to put it aside, to do investments. One day he's given me a ride to Universal Studios. Actually, we were doing an event there.
Mm-hmm.
And he texts me, "You're going to see how fast this car." So he's young, right? We'll see how fast and I'm like, my head's going back though. So the car's fast, right? But then he pops up. Well, like we're sitting and we're waiting on something. He pops up. He goes, "Yeah, I didn't only buy the car. I bought into the company." So he's showing me all his stocks and stuff because he's understands the value of his future. He doesn't understand just the value of today, which is what most young people do, is they just want to blow their money. The minute if they have a job, they get paid, oof, let's go out and party. Instead of like, yeah, I'm going to party, but I'm not going to use all of my money to party, right? So talk to me about why it is so important, not only for a young person, maybe somebody who got divorced, how to rebuild their credit score, or somebody to build it up from the beginning.
One of the biggest factors that I've been talking about recently, I've always talked about credit score. But in 2024, the average age of the first-time home buyer hit 38 years old, which is ridiculous. We're usually in our young 30s. Like I've said on my podcast before, how many people do you know, that are just regular 32-year-old people that have their stuff together? Quite a few,
Not many.
yeah. Well, I mean, like, have a decent job and are doing all right.
Right.
Well, if you're renting for that average rent where you are, then you probably could be into starter home. So what we talk about a lot on the podcast is a rent replacement strategy. Instead of looking at the how much you pay in rent versus how much you're going to pay in a mortgage and going, oh, it's $800 more for a mortgage. Well, yeah, it's $800 more, but you're putting $2,000 a month to nothing.
Right.
So that's $24,000 a year that goes to nothing. So you'll pay $800 more a month, but you're still putting the same $2,000 into it. So the earlier we can instill a rent replacement strategy, and I'm all for and understand life happens and some people need to rent, but or want to rent.
Right.
But the earlier we can get into them that a rent replacement strategy is not going to be wasted years, then that's when we can get them excited about fixing their credit when they're young. I've interviewed on the podcast, I interviewed a 19-year-old I found on TikTok, and I was like, dude, he bought a house and was like documenting his journey. Somewhere when he was 16 or so, someone told him about credit scores and whatever. And when he was 18 years old, he got 2 credit cards. That's how you build your credit score. The day he turned 18. And in his words, my friends were like, dude, you can't get a credit. That's bad. You're going to ruin your life. And in his words, again, he said, no, just don't be dumb, dude. That's what he said. So understanding the responsibility of a credit score when you're 18 years old, it can be a huge thing. My son's a freshman in college, and he's learning how to use a credit card. Now I'm paying for all his food and stuff, but he uses the credit card. Then I send him money, then he pays it off. So I'm making him use it. The other gigantic thing I did, Google credit score makeup pie chart. Anyone listening, watching right now, and you'll see a pie chart that the 5 different things that make up your credit score. One of the biggest chunks is credit history.
Yeah.
One of the biggest hacks. What do I do when I'm 18 and I have 2 credit cards and now it's a month after my birthday? Ask someone in your family, someone you know and you trust, to do what's called an authorized user. You go on their credit card, they add you to one of their credit cards, and suddenly you have years and years of history.
Wow.
At 49 years old, as an experiment for my podcast listeners and the YouTube watchers, I did it. And my dad put me on his Navy Federal Credit Union credit card, and I got like 40 years worth of history. My
What?
credit score went up 40 points.
What?
Yep. So the authorized user is the biggest magic trick I could tell people about working their credit score. If you're in a tough situation, then a secured credit card can be a way to build your credit score.
Right.
And one of the really exciting things that's happened over the last 2 or 3 years, your rent, which has never been reported to the credit bureaus, can now be reported to the credit bureaus.
Wow. I hope everybody's listening, because anybody who's renting, hello, start
It's the
reporting.
biggest payment you make every month.
Does it get reported by you or the landlord?
It depends. You can go through a few. It depends on which agency you use. There are a few different. Now banks are starting to do it. Some credit card companies are starting to do it. And when you talk to them, you'll sign up for it. And each individual monitoring program will have different ways they do it. Mine clients that I talked to recently, when I was talking to them, the most recent people that I talked to, it went directly to their landlord, and then the landlord just signs up, and many of the landlords are getting used to it now.
Mm. Right.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Those are the 2 big tricks.
Nice.
Get your rent on your credit score, and if you can, get an authorized user.
I love what that young man said. Don't be dumb, right? Because what he meant by that is pay it off at the end of the month. Don't keep the running, score, if you will, because it will ruin your credit. Or not only that, if you buy something for $2,000 and you keep paying it off the minimum, it's going to cost you $4,000, right?
Absolutely. What's really interesting about it is there's like you see the different phases of credit score comprehension. The 18, 19, 20-year-olds who have no idea, a lot of them will sign up for a credit card on a college campus because they get a free Frisbee if they fill something out, and then you see the mid-20s people that start thinking, oh, I can use a credit card to get my points. And they want to travel, so they get travel points.
Right.
What I like to explain to people is, okay, you're 21 years old now, and you have a job and you get a paycheck. How are you buying your gas, your groceries, and all that? Well, it's different than it was in the old days. No one's paying cash. No one's writing checks. They're using a debit card, but they're using it like a credit card. Yeah. So the simplest way to build your credit is get a credit card instead, put that debit card in a drawer, and use the credit card everywhere you go, and then leave the cash in your checking account. And then seriously, it's 2 touches on your phone. Open the credit card, pay with my checking account, boom. It's the same $1,000 worth of stuff that you bought, but now you got $1,000 worth of responsible credit history, so that later on, you'll not only be able to get credit cards with a larger available credit, but you're also going to see an increase in your credit score.
You're also getting those perks.
Yeah. Cashback is the thing now. It used to be all about.
I love getting cash back.
Me too.
I was just telling somebody recently, I went on a trip, and I had an expense on it. It was like, I don't know, $1,900. So I used my cash from my credit card, and instead of me going into my banking account. I let them pay themselves.
I love that. I love that. I'll go through different things with my cash back. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh, okay, well, let me use that for this reward or that reward.
Right.
But then if I let it build up, then I'll use the credit card and then I go, oh, you would like a payment for that? We'll take it. It's right there.
Yeah, I love doing that. And because here's one of the things, because I have several businesses, I use one particular card to purchase business stuff. And that's money coming back, right? Always money, right? And it's important when we understand the value of money and how to leverage money, like what we're talking about. So in 2025, you give great tips on your podcast. And thank you for telling us about your podcast. Tell us now what it is. And then we'll go into that question. Tell us about your podcast for a sec.
How to buy a home.
It can't get easier than that.
Yep. That's it. That's it. How to buy a home since 2019. We're pretty much the only one that didn't try it for a little bit and fade out.
Gotcha. So how to buy a home, you go and you can listen to it on your radio, not radio, on your iPhone, wherever you on the train, on your car ride, even if you're rollerblading and you're in your 20s, because guess what? The rollerblades are good because they're going to get you somewhere and you're going to have fun doing it, and you can be learning. I call this university on wheels, my friend. Right?
That's an old term from when I don't know if you did it, but I first heard that term when I used to go to an actual brick and mortar store to get books on tape. Yes,
Yeah.
cassette tape.
Yeah.
That was my road trip university.
Oh yeah, I used to get well, think about I'm forgetting his name, but he had well, he had on real estate, he had how to be a better salesman and so forth.
Tom Hopkins.
Yes, thank you. I got his tapes.
Heck yeah,
back in
baby.
the day. Great tapes. Here's one thing that I love about being an agent. When I was an agent, I still use all those techniques.
There's so much self-growth that comes
Oof.
within, that
Oh yeah.
the best real estate brokers understand that you are a salesperson.
Oh yeah.
And the
Always.
best sales training comes from Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins, Brian Tracy.
Oh yeah.
And I still listen to that stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's an entrepreneur's playbook. I mean, we've all got Napoleon Hill, but now
Right.
we've got these 20th century versions and 21st.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2025, here's the question for you. In your podcast, you're sharing with people how to even start from day one. Would you share some of those tips on here? Because I think that this audience would love. I hope they start listening to you, because it's great information that you doing it. Because let's say I have young kids, right? But that information, I can share it along with them. Even if they're 16, 17, why not get them to start listening or get the ideas and concepts that you're sharing? So when it's time for them to start investing in their futures, that they take some of these tips that you're sharing. So definitely, I recommend everybody to listen to your show. But would you share a couple of first-time things that people should start doing if they're total first-time home buyer or a repeat first-time home buyer?
Well, it works for everyone. And the system that I've created to help people with just education, basic. I call it the last lease ever. And it was humbly created when I held a focus group 5 years in. I was the guru. I was the number one podcast for first-time home buyers. And I got a bunch of 20-year-olds in a room and had a focus group and got my butt handed to me. because I started talking to them about the educational process and the options that they had. And as I got into all of the options about the low down payment, about an FHA loan, about getting a seller credit, about using a mortgage interest rate buy down, this girl raised her hand and said, dude, that's when I hire you. My lease is up in 9 months. What do I do today? Light bulb went off. Now, I'd been saying this, but I hadn't put it all together. Here's what you do. You take 3 pieces of your financial life and you create simple, small baby action steps. I always think about it like those thermometers when you're someone's trying to have a charity drive. We get your thermometer and we see where you are on your credit score, on your debt, and on your savings. So your credit score, you're going to find out where your score is today, and then you're going to figure out where you want to go. The interest rates and the fees associated with purchasing a home, they change every 20 points in your credit score. So if you're sitting with a 580 credit score, there's a bunch of people on the internet that are going to tell you, you can still get a home loan. Yeah, they're right. You can. But should you? If you've got a 580 credit score, should you run out and try to get a home right now? Or should you listen to somebody that can help you get your credit score up? Because if you go to 600, you're getting better rates, better fees.
That's just that 20%.
Yeah. And so as
20
you,
points.
20 points. Yeah. So step 1, discover where your credit score is. I've got a whole episode that we do on that. You go to annualcreditreport.com. You get 3 times a year. You can check your credit score for free, and it's full. It's so much better than everyone else that tells you that it's free. Credit Karma and, free credit score and all that stuff. They're all trying to sell you something. Annualcreditreport.com was set up by the government so that you can check out. You get 3 times a year, one with each bureau. And you can find out where your score is. And then you listen to the podcast and get those tips and tricks like we talked about earlier, the authorized user, using it instead of your debit card, all those little things. And then you just monitor and you say, you know what, 760 is the highest, but maybe it's 700. I can get a decent loan rate. So this month, your one action step, consolidate some of this debt, try to get your credit usage at least below 50% on your credit cards. Boom. One little thing to do. That's your credit score. Then your debt. See where we're at on your debt. Now, this is going to be a little more complicated for everybody, but if you have multiple credit cards and trying to figure it out, check out the snowball method. Look at, make sure you understand how debt works, and then create a payment program. But the key is, don't just pay off all your debt without putting anything into savings, because that's your third thermometer. And because what happens is people will pay down all their debt and have nothing in savings. And you can purchase a home with some debt. So that third thermometer is your savings. You're like, great, David, I've got $5,000, but you told me don't have to do anything about a house. What do I do next? Cool. Go on Zillow, look at sold prices, not list prices, for the homes that you want to buy. When you find that, take 5% of that purchase price of that home, of that, what it's sold for, add 3% for closing costs. And so 8% is your number. So 8% of whatever home you want, that's the top of your thermometer. And then automate. With a touch of a button, you could put $25 a week into that savings account and then do nothing.
Yeah.
On the episode where I explain this last lease ever program, people, I tell them in 30 minutes, you can set it up. And then in 30 days, check them out again for 30 minutes and then do it again in 30 days. And at the end of 12 months, you're going to be in a position where you can start talking to someone about buying a home. But those are steps you can start right now.
When you talk about the 5% and the 3%, the 5% is for the bank, the 3% is for closing costs. Does that include taxes? What does it include? And when you talk about 8% total, is that across the U.S. or is that just in Southern California? Talk to us about that. because some people think that they have to save 10% or 20%. What is the real deal? If let's say I'm 20 and I got a pretty good credit score. Let's say it's 720, and or maybe I'm 25, right? And it's 20%. I'm making good money, and I go to any bank, whether it's TD Bank, Chase, Citibank, whatever, and whatever their interest rate is, they're going to tell me 5% only.
No, that is one option. So one of the biggest crimes that's going on with the real estate industry and their lack of educating the public is that 41% in a recent survey I saw of non-homeowners think you need 20% down to buy a home. The average first-time home buyer, the average down payment for a first-time home buyer last year, in one of the hardest times ever to buy a home as a first-timer, was 8%. So the myth is completely wrong. Here are the loan options. Not everyone is eligible for all of them, but I can tell you 20 years working with first-time home buyers and 6 years working with tens of thousands of them. Most of them use a 3 or a 3.5% down payment. Wow. Most of the people and for multiple different reasons. In my thermometer scenario, to get people started, I give them 5% because that is an option that a lot of people use too. But it also just lets them know I'm not trying to scam them. I'm not trying to tell them you can buy a house with a 580 credit score and no money down. Right. They just want to get you in the door with that. It's true, you can, but they just want to get you in the door and then wrestle you into whatever works. Right. So the numbers work like this. The USDA, which is a loan for rural homes, and the VA loan for veterans, active and retired, those are zero down loans. There are also some government funded and some municipally funded, meaning like within the city, grants that will pay your down payment. So you basically have a zero down payment. So that's the lowest option that's out there for many people. The next is a 3% conventional loan. So the person who's thinking about putting 10% down probably qualifies for a 3% down payment as well. That's an option. The next step up is 3.5%, and that's FHA. That's where a lot of people, first-time home buyers, use that loan. It has less strict guidelines. It's a little looser on your credit, and it also has a higher debt-to-income ratio, your DTI. You want to get nerdy with me? Check out the podcast. I'll explain all that to you.
I love it.
I'm a dork with that stuff. But that's why I use 5%. Yeah, there's a ton below it, but the average is only 8%. So, and then the second part of your question, let me try to do this quick. Closing costs. The most confusing part of real estate, and no one has figured it out and done it right. So the reason is because part of your closing costs is prepaying your taxes, and those taxes are different everywhere. So the younger generation wants to go online and say, Google, how do I buy a $400,000 house? What are my closing costs? Google can't tell you. There's 12 million different answers, and it changes sometimes literally address to address. Sometimes the extra assessments might be different for one side of the street than it is for the other. Therefore, your taxes are different. Therefore, your closing costs are going to be different. So what closing costs cover is you're paying the title company, the people that record, you're paying the lawyers depending on where you are, or you're paying the escrow company because again, those change from state to state. So yet you're paying the fees to the people that service. Now, most people think that's it. And that's why they're saying, well, hey, my closing costs are, $5,000. My brother closed and his were only $4,000. These companies are ripping me off. Well, what state was he in? Right. Who's he paying? That's number one. But then the other thing that gets really complex about closing costs is when you close on a home, you prepay, depending on where you're at, a different number. You prepay 6 months of your taxes in some places. Some places you prepay a year. You prepay 6 months of an HOA if you're buying a condo or a townhome. Sometimes different areas will make you pay a month or a year, excuse me. So those numbers are all over the place, and it just gets thrown into one lump thing called closing costs. So the easiest way I can describe it is it's not the fee set by the people helping you actually complete the process and the purchase. So it's not like when you're pricing out vendors. It involves numerous other things.
David, when somebody has acquired the loan, they go before they actually sit down and get the keys, if you will, make closing day and so forth. There is something that everybody needs to do, which is a home inspection. Talk to us about how you help somebody understand the value of home inspectors and even how to vet out a good one.
The process of purchasing a home, especially as a first-time home buyer, involves a lot of trust.
Yes.
There are people that will that create trust in their own psyche by becoming research hounds, and they will look at reviews and see people's websites, and that's how they'll create a trust. So whatever your personal system is for vetting and feeling comfortable, 1,000% do it. Here's the biggest tip on home inspections. I am blown away at first-time home buyers because so many of them are younger. I say this is a 55-year-old dude. They've had the world at their fingertips for ordering things, and so they're just used to a certain level of comparison shopping. You pick something on Amazon. What's the first thing you do? You scroll down to see, oh, you like that one, you might like this. You go on Amazon, you decide, do you want to look at their sponsored ones, or do you want to look at them priced high to low, or do you want to look at the ones with the best reviews? So when you're going through that process, it blows me away that someone will be buying a $400,000 house. I keep using that because that's the national average is $427 right now. And the home inspectors might cost anywhere from $500 to $1,500. And they will call 3 or 4 people, and they will pick one based on the fact that they're $100 less than the other one. It's a $427,000 house, and and the home inspector, the person who's going to tell you, yes, you have a $20,000 problem, or no, you're gonna absolutely find the best, spend the most money. And then the simplest way to do that is one of the things that how to buy a home, as I tell everyone, is every single first-time home buyer I've run into over the last 6 years while I've been doing this, they all spend months researching home inspectors and loan rates and neighborhoods, and then they go back and do loan rates, and then they do loan rates, and they research that for months and months and months, and they spend 5 minutes picking a realtor. Spend 3 months choosing your realtor. Understand your realtor is the hub, and your realtor will have fabulous recommendations for your lender and for your home inspector.
Absolutely. When so what happens? Let's say I like house A, I like house B, and I like house C. So I'm going to go with B. I go with B, and I put my deposit, the whole deal, and I get the home inspector, and the home inspector comes in and he goes, "Oof, foundation is this, the roof is it's going to be, it's old, it's because I don't know anything, right? And you need a new furnace, so now for me to replace all these things, I'm looking at 20, 30, $40,000. So I go, I'm not going to buy this house. So now am I the one that's out on that home inspection piece, or is the home inspector going to say, well, because you made a deposit, you're going to get your deposit back, but the homeowner, because they didn't declare anything, who's responsible for that?
every single real estate contract in North America will have a layman's term would be a buyer beware period. It's called something different everywhere. A contingency period, a due diligence period, conditions period, it's called in some places. Basically, you're saying we have now negotiated and agreed upon this price. As the buyer, I have in California, it's 17 days, 21 days for some parts of the contingencies. Within that time, the seller has to provide certain things to the buyer, and the buyer is given permission to do multiple different inspections on multiple different things. They're checking the title, they're checking for liens, they're if there is an HOA, they're reviewing the HOA documents. And any one of those things could be a reason that they decide to remove themselves and cancel the transaction. So at the beginning of the transaction, you'll put down an earnest money deposit held by a neutral third party. That deposit remains there until all parties sign off on this due diligence period. So if within your inspection, now typically, and again, this is general, it's very specific. So this is not umbrella for everyone. But typically, if you go into an inspection and you have a number like, okay, we like this house, but we don't want to pay for a $10,000 repair on the HVAC unit if it pops up, or the roof, or the foundation. So if the inspector comes back and says, here's a list of things, each of them's a few $100. You're fixing a leaky faucet there. You got to fix this drain line over here. Yeah. Okay, great. Then you say fine and you move forward. If it's a $10,000 problem, yes, you could immediately just say, nope, don't want to buy this house. We found something we don't like in the inspection. And you are then, in most contracts, able to remove yourself and get your deposit back. What usually happens is the negotiation starts between buyer and seller. And that, of course, all depends on everyone's motivation. But the inspection process should be, and again, that's why it all starts with the real estate agent. If your realtor has written the contract in the most protective way for you, then you're able to go through all these inspections and never lose your deposit.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Wow. You are a wealth of knowledge, my friend. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think that a lot of people have gained, whether they're watching it live or are going to watch the replay, they're going to get a lot of information. What I'd love to do right now, because you kindly shared it, so I appreciate you. What I want to do right now, I'm going to put your link here so that everybody can come and find you. You have 30, 45 seconds. Promote yourself, my friend.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Learning or guiding and educating people is my passion. And that's why I so enjoyed this last hour with you. And if you're looking for simple guidance and education that you can do while you're on the treadmill, washing the dogs, well, maybe not washing, maybe walking the dogs, then that's what I've created. It's all at howtobuyahome.com. Everything you need to know. There's over 320 something episodes, top to bottom. Get educated and feel comfortable. And of course, if you ever have any questions, there's an Ask David button, and I am insane and answer every one.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, David. What a pleasure you are, my friend. And listen, everybody listening, share this show because someone needs to listen to what we shared today. And the good thing about it is that you can listen to it when you're driving or on the train or wherever you're doing, gardening, whatever, just put on some headphones, you can listen to it again. The beauty about what we do, David, is that we get to talk to so many incredible people, and I'm blessed that I got to talk to you, my friend. I would love for you to come on my other shows as well, so we'll talk about that. Everybody have yourself an exceptional day. David, stay on for a minute, and everybody, like I said, follow David. He's got great stuff for you. Maybe for your kids or your cousins or whoever. Share it. Share it. All right, everybody. Have a blessed day. We'll talk soon.